Makes a longer journey, doesn't it, South Dakota? Yeah. They don't care, though. They're here. They're here. We're here because we what? Gather. Thank you. We're here because we gather. And I'm absolutely blessed by this effort, this small camp, the little camp that could, that Shelly and I and a couple of others put together a few years ago. And it was actually our dream to rotate through this big, beautiful state. How many of you know that Montana, trivia for you, Heather, is the fourth largest state in the U.S.? So when you travel the fourth largest state in the U.S., you're going to put a few miles on your odometer. And I appreciate stuff like that because I love driving. And you have to kind of love driving if you're living in Montana. I've heard quite a few conversations amongst our friends saying, oh yeah, that's just 5 hours down the road. My friends in South Dakota know this, right? Yeah. So that's how we roll around here. Although, Kristen, in D.C., it's a little different, isn't it? Yeah. It's a very, time is different over here. So when I say things like, oh, we're going to move MontanaCamp to Kalispell, for Bozeman, it's like, okay, it's the other side. For others, it's like, oh, that's 5 hours away, right? 5 hours, long time. 5 hours of good windshield time. So yes, we're moving MontanaCamp next year to Kalispell. Yes, yeah, okay. Now we're talking. And I'm very excited about that because I live in Kalispell, so my drive will be just a little shorter. And actually, what that does help out the crew quite a bit because we have a lot of resources in Kalispell that we're excited to pour into you. And I don't know if you caught the literature in that video. By the way, the space theme is going to be quite different than the Yellowstone theme, so we're really turning it upside down. We're going to expand the conference, the reach and the intention of this conference into a platform that I don't think I've ever seen. And somebody who has been studying conferences for a few years now, I'm very excited about that. We're breaking the conference out of the shell of one room and into multiple avenues. So stay tuned, and I'm going to have more information about that even tomorrow. So just stay tuned and be excited, okay? How are we feeling this morning? This morning, I have a very special gift for you. Because I think it's going to not only inspire you, and it'll also allow you to understand one of our fellow agents' stories. I believe it will inspire you to deep dive on your own story. And why that's important to me and why I believe that's important to you is because how many times do you get that image or that story from others, and it sounds a little bit like this. Oh, you're just paid a lot of money to open doors. Oh, you're just paid a lot of money to shuffle paper, And I think that the consumer sometimes gets confused with that image because there's plenty of people in Hollywood that make it look like that. Yet the reality is we wear a lot of hats, and we take a lot of punches, and we do a lot of work that sometimes we go unpaid for. There's a lot of pain behind what we do. Sometimes we even have to look at ourselves in the mirror and defeat our own, and I'm going to go there, Kristen, drunk monkey. We can say that at MontanaCamp. and what I mean by that, though, is we have to defeat that greatest challenge, which is our own doubt. Because we'll wake up after the day of a very bad moment. Maybe a deal fell apart. Maybe that other agent that you once really loved just turned to the devil. Because that's happened too. And we ask ourselves, why do I do this? Why do I do this? Have you ever taken a look at the time of a transaction and then divided those hours to find out that you made less than a Chick-fil-A employee? Yeah, that hurts, right? And they have fun, and they have Sunday off, free food. Sometimes it feels that way. So I think that what helps us in those moments is reminding ourselves why we do what we do. What excites me about this industry, about what you and I do every day when we open doors for people. By the way, I actually love that answer. I'm going to take another little tangent rabbit trail here. When people say, oh, you just get paid a lot of money to open doors, and I say, yes, I do. I open doors of opportunity as often as I'm allowed. Right? Yeah. We're in a church, that'll preach. Just gonna go there. Because that's what we do. Because even those times where, there are times where you're talking to somebody and you're looking at them and you realize that they may have called you because they said, Kyler, I want to buy a house. And you interview this person, you realize that they're probably miles away from that day. However, you found something in them that's passion, and you flip the script a little bit and you say, hey, Justin, have you thought about doing what I do? Have you thought about entering this world where you get kicked in the face for fun? And you change someone's life. Just before we threw that video on the screen, I was chatting with Taylor, and Taylor's putting together something great as a gift of gratitude for another person, and we were just reflecting on the fact that that's happening exponentially. I'm gonna borrow your term, Daniel, exponentially right now, because we're pouring into each other because we've chosen to gather. You realize that you are someone else's inspiration today as they are your inspiration today, and that's why we're here. That's why we're gathering. So on that note, someone who's become a good friend of mine and actually has become somebody that I look up to. And chronologically, it should be the other way around because I've been in the industry longer. However, he's outperformed me by miles. And instead of viewing that as competition, like, oh man, he broke the 4-minute mile faster and better than I did, we look at it as collaboration. And today, proudly, we talk nearly daily. And oftentimes the conversation is an intention to build each other up because we need to do that. And this is a tough industry. And what I'm excited about, what we're going to share with you this morning, is we're going to dive into his why. We're going to open up the book, and we're going to read these pages together. And my hope is that you view this as a story of inspiration and survival, yet you also view it as a model that which you can apply to your lives, because you are also precious and unrepeatable and unique, and you have your story too. And you're here to be a blessing unto another. And if you get one thing out of our conversation that's about to happen, let it be a model so that you can then turn your story into light for somebody else, okay? Yeah. So on that note, please welcome to the stage your boy, Mikey Hyde.
I'm Mike Hyde, this is Callie Hyde, and we are parents of Cash Hyde. We started the Cash Hyde Foundation while fighting cancer with our son Cash, and it's grown throughout the years. We've been doing it for 8 years now, and we have the foundation to help families fighting cancer, continue Cash's legacy, and have a positive outlet for our loss of Cash, and continue helping families going through the hardships of fighting pediatric cancer. Sportsmen Against Cancer is a division of the Cash Hyde Foundation. We designed it to unite sportsmen around Montana and the United States together for the cause of fighting pediatric cancer. Sportsmen Against Cancer impacts everybody because cancer affects everybody. And so the way we look at Sportsmen Against Cancer is it's a way for us to reach out to families and directly help them that are going through the hardships of fighting cancer on a ground level. Each year our event has doubled in size, and we really look forward to every event that we put on and watching the support from our community show up, get behind our cause, and watch everyone have a good evening of just good food, good networking, and supporting families fighting cancer. I believe people should support our organization because we're a local 501c3 nonprofit founded right here in Missoula, Montana. 100% of the money raised goes to our cause. Nobody on our foundation makes a salary, a paycheck. Everything is volunteer driven, and we do our very best to make sure that the money that we raise goes directly to what we say it's going to go to, which is helping families fight cancer, financially assisting families, sending kids on cancer grant hunts, and fighting cancer with smiles. I mean, really our big picture is to be able to help as many families as possible without having to limit our resources. And so as the foundation grows and our Sportsmen Against Cancer division grows, our hopes would be to help as many families as possible. The future of the Hyde Foundation and our Sportsmen Against Cancer is, I mean, sky's the limit. What we foresee in the future is an actual healing center where families from all over the world can come to Montana and parents can relax, kids can go on adventures, healthy siblings can actually get out there and get on the rivers and participate in Montana's outdoors and kind of find themselves a retreat.
Thank you.
Mike, introduce us to your family. Talk to us about your family.
So, I'm your boy, Mikey Hyde, obviously. I grew up in Missoula, Montana. Met my wife in high school, got married young, had my oldest son when I was 20.
Wait a minute, high school sweetheart.
Yep.
You're that story. I've heard about
Part
you.
of it, yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Part of one of those stories.
Cool.
So it's crazy. My son's gonna be 19,
Wow.
really quick here, and I'm like, oh man, like I was him just like a blink ago, and
Yeah.
now he's like where I was when my journey started.
Yeah.
And that's how fast life goes.
Really is. How many of you were there? Right? It happens fast, right? I'm right behind you. My son's 17, and it's unreal, isn't it? For a minute, I mean, let's just share that moment. For those of you who aren't there, hear it from us. Treasure every minute. Yeah, and don't take them for granted.
Well, what's wild is we all hear it, like, oh, time goes by fast, but faster than you think, and then all of a sudden, like, I've been with KW 7 years, and my son's gonna be 19.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find excuses to keep him from moving out. I'm like, oh, you don't gotta move out yet, man. Like, let's just play this out a little bit longer.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure some of us with our recruiting hats on were thinking, well, he's over 18. He can become a realtor.
He's took his class, but you can't force anyone. So he's sitting on his license and mowing lawns. So.
Okay. Fair. Okay, so you have a 19-year-old, married your high school sweetheart.
Yep.
What else?
So let's see here.
How big's your family?
I'm trying to go backwards for you here.
Okay.
To get this chronological. So we started young. We had Colton. Then we had Cash. We planned Cash. That was probably one of the funnest experiences in my life, was when my wife wanted to make a baby. And ironically enough, it was during elk season.
For many reasons.
So like the elk were in the rut. I was in the rut. I spent like $4,000 in gas in 2007 driving back and forth from Georgetown to Missoula because I had a goal. And it was to make a baby.
Fair enough. Okay, I think we all got that picture. Thank you. Yep. We don't need that slide. Thank you.
Roll the cue. So that was a fun experience in my life. Watching my children be born was a very impactful moment in my life. My oldest daughter, Catherine, she was born in 2012 in a really tough year for us. And then my youngest daughter, Rebel, was born in 2014.
Okay.
And so I was changing diapers for like 15 years, it felt like.
Yeah.
And now I'll hold a baby, but I'm not changing diapers anymore.
You're done with that?
I'm done with that.
Okay.
15 years.
We turned the page on that chapter.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. So let's make sure we have this math correctly. Colton is 19.
He'll be 18, going to be 19.
Okay, 18. And yeah, so you've been a dad for almost 19 years.
Yep.
And the rest of them followed. And at what point did you get, and you've born in Missoula? Or no, you're not born in Missoula. You grew up in Missoula, though, right?
I grew up in Missoula. I was born in Salt Lake, moved to Missoula 1994. So I feel like I'm a native to Montana because all of my life experiences are in Montana.
Sure.
Grew up on the Blackfoot River.
Right.
This is back, in the 90s. There was no internet. There was no cell phones.
Oh, the good days.
And like my mom, she would just drop us off on the Blackfoot corridor. And my dad would pick us up at the bottom of it at the end of the day. And so we would spend a majority of our days just trying to survive on the river, being 12-year-old kids. And that was my childhood. And
that's Darwinism at its finest right there. Survival of the fittest.
we made it.
Yeah, the Blackfoot River Playground. Okay.
Yep. It was a playground. So like, I get a kick out of it because like moms at the office will like, well, I gotta go take my kids to Splash, Montana, and they're like 12, 13 years old, and I'm like, dude, Montana will raise those kids for you. Just get them on the river.
Yeah, and the strong ones will survive.
Strong ones will survive.
Yeah.
And we'll always think the rest of them should have.
Fair enough. And your wife, what's her name?
My wife's name's Callie. She's a registered nurse at Community Hospital, and she's actually a real estate agent on our team now as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got to pay off those student loans somehow, man.
Yeah, right? Mike, when did you get into real estate?
I got into real estate in 2016, and no, it was actually 2015. I started selling in 2016. It was a challenging time in my life. After we went through our battle with cash and cancer, and we lost cash in end of 2012, and after that we lost our home, lost our cars, went down to gym bags, and honestly that was the rock bottom. Was cash passing away. Sure. All the other things was just like the aftermath. It's kind of like it didn't matter, but it was like it impacted us in a positive way, losing everything, because once you don't have to worry about the mortgage, the keeping up with everything, and you're humbled down to a gym bag and a 96 Chevy pickup, that's pretty free, honestly.
Sure.
And so after he passed away, we spent a couple years helping families. It's a part of my story I don't share a lot. In our journey with Cash, he became the youngest medical cannabis patient in the United States in 2010. And through his story, it changed the way that society looks at pediatric use of cannabis. Okay. And it's changed the journey for thousands of kids that have epilepsy and are battling cancer, because now they have safe access. Okay. In 2010, that wasn't the case. Right. And so, when I went to my first Bold, and Mitch Schwartz got up, and how many of you guys have been to Bold? Yeah, there you go. So when they talk about that story about doing whatever it takes, they kind of role play through that journey of your kid's eating poison and the car don't start. What are you gonna do? Right. Well, that's where we were at in 2010. Our kid was diagnosed with a very aggressive stage 4 cancer. It was wrapped around his optic nerve, so it was inoperable. And the only treatment they had for him was developed in the late 70s. And it was just a dumbed down dose of high dose chemotherapy and stem cell rescue, same as you or I would get if we were to, be diagnosed with cancer. Cancer wrapped around his optic nerve, therefore they couldn't get it. They couldn't get it without completely taking out his eyes, his whole neurological system, because and they had to do a biopsy to get to it. So when he was first diagnosed, it was a roller coaster, 72 hours. Basically, he was going blind. He was misdiagnosed for several months, and that's where my journey of listening to my my inner self, or God, the universe, like we hear these thoughts, and I was holding my son, and I knew he was sick, and the doctor kept telling us it was mono, and it didn't feel right. Like it felt like he was dying in my hands, and he was. And so it was a series of events that took place in May of 2010 that ended us going to the ER after his visit with the pediatrician.
How old was he?
He was right about 19 months at this time.
Wow.
So he was just a little guy.
Wow.
And it happened quick. He was sick, and then all of a sudden he was really sick.
Right.
And so what ended up happening was they did a MRI on him, and they found that he had this 4-centimeter tumor in his brain, and that was out of Missoula's ability to facilitate. And so what I learned in 2010 is families in Montana that are battling pediatric cancer, they have to leave the state.
Yeah.
In 2010, there was nowhere for us to go in Montana to battle this disease with our son. So we had to pretty much uproot from our home. And
Where'd you go?
we went to Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay.
We had a choice, Salt Lake City or Seattle, Washington. And we have family in Salt Lake, so we chose Salt Lake because my oldest son, Colton, was 4 at the time. And so Life Flight took Callie and Cash to Salt Lake, and Colton and I had to go back to the house and load up the car with some stuff to go down and fight cancer.
And you had no idea how long
we had no idea
this
of
would be.
anything. All we knew at that moment was he had a 4-centimeter tumor, and
Pack the bags.
we got to go. And
What were you doing for work at this time?
so at this time, I was in the auto industry, and so I grew up working on diesel pickups and selling cars. So I've always had a entrepreneurial spirit to flip things and sell things, and so at that time I was in this transition of selling cars, and I was financially not where I needed to be to go into a battle like this. So we ended up shutting the car lot down.
Okay.
And we basically just unplugged from reality in 2010. And so for a family that's going through something like that, I feel like all of you experienced what we experienced in 2020. Because COVID didn't affect me the way it affected a lot of people.
Sure.
Because I already did that. I already
Right.
played that scare game.
Yeah.
For us, we were the ones isolated. When Cash was immunocompromised, we were the ones that couldn't leave the room.
Oh.
We were the ones that had to wear the face masks.
So he's 19 months. He's progressing rapidly. You're throwing things in gym bags, leaving Missoula, driving your oldest down
Yep.
to meet up with your wife and your child, your son, in Salt Lake City. Still confused as to what's happening.
I was a wreck. My dad was driving. I was in the passenger seat crying.
How long of a drive is it from Missoula to Salt Lake?
It was about 8 hours. That day it was about 4.5.
8 hours.
Yeah.
That day was about 4.5.
Yeah.
Understood.
So I still remember it like yesterday. We left Missoula. It was probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. I was crying. My dad was driving. I was a wreck. And my son's 4 years old, and I just love this kid. He reached up from the back seat, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Hey, Dad, it's going to be okay. Cash is going to be okay. We got this." And it slapped me. I was like, wait a minute, my son's coaching me right now.
Yeah.
I need to get my stuff together quickly.
Yeah.
And I need to be here for these guys. And so at that moment, I made a decision in the car, and it was, how am I going to approach this journey? And everybody has a choice on how they're going to address a situation. And my choice at that moment was I was going to be the rock for my children, and I was going to take this battle on head on for whatever it was and try and find the good wherever it lied within it. So every conversation I was having was for a reason. Every person I was talking to at the hospital was for a reason. Kind of like destiny was playing out, and that's how we approach cancer. And that's how we built our foundation with fighting cancer with smiles.
Let's paint this picture real fast, and I'm gonna go back further in time to a story of Sparta. And I picture you at that moment in the car with your son's hand on your shoulder, and you had that moment of enlightenment where you realized, I need to be a shield. I need to be a shield. This is a battle, and it's not a matter of whether I like it or not. I am going to charge through this, and I'm going to do this while simultaneously guarding what is most important.
Yeah.
And here's the battle. Here's the tricky part. Like a Spartan warrior would back then, they have their armor, yet you still need to keep your eyes open so that you can know which way to go. And that's scary because that's vulnerability.
Well, and I didn't know what to trust,
Right.
because our doctor that we trusted told us not to worry, that he had mono. And had I continued listening to her, he would have passed away from mono.
Sure.
And we would have lost him in early 2010. So I was forced to challenge what I was being told, and that's what brought us into our journey of fighting cancer and opting into using medical cannabis. What I found is each day, 47 children are diagnosed with cancer, and each day, 7 children will pass away from the battle of cancer.
Yeah.
And out of those 7 kids that die each day, they're not dying from the cancer itself, they're dying from the treatment and the drugs that they're giving these children.
Okay.
And so they're basically getting overdosed on opiates and having organ failure, and they're malnourished. And so when we opted to start using medical cannabis for him, it was after everything in 2010 had failed. And we had a really tough conversation with the doctors where it was September. I came home, and so it was scary because I had to break some laws. And that's why when I listened to, when I went to my first bold, it resonated so well with me, was because I was going to do whatever it took for my son. And if it meant going to jail, I was okay with that.
Yeah.
And they were running out of options for him.
Yeah.
And so in 2010, in September, we sat down with him, and we were doing stem cell rescue after high-dose chemo. So when you do high-dose chemo, it wipes your whole entire body out, all your cells, good, bad, everything,
Right.
until your body's dead. And then what they do is they either give you stem cell rescue or a bone marrow transplant. Since his cancer was isolated to his brain and behind the blood-brain barrier, it hadn't went through his whole body, so we could use his stem cells basically to rescue him.
Sure.
And so basically, they give you the high-dose chemo. You hit 0, it takes about a day.
Okay.
And then that's when you're dead, but you're still alive.
Right, your body's gone.
Gone.
Okay.
And then they give you stem cell rescue. We sing you happy birthday. And so in 2010, he had 3 birthdays.
Right, okay.
On top of his regular birthday. And that's when we sat down with the doctors, and he was vomiting probably 14, 15 times a day. He hadn't eaten in over, I think, 30 days or so. And as a caregiver, there's nothing worse than the person you're caring for not wanting to eat, because that's the will to live. And it's without eating, you're not going to be here long.
You're not going to make it, yeah.
And so when we sat down with the doctors and we had this conversation with them, and I was like, is there anything you guys can do for Cash? He's super sick. He was probably sleeping, all of us were sleeping erratically because you're in a hospital room.
Yeah.
But he was insomniac, and it was just really hard watching. And the doctor said, look, guys, you guys are fighting a stage 4 tumor. We're using high-dose chemo and stem cell rescue, and your son's on max amounts of all the narcotics out of the nausea, pain cocktails that we have to give him.
Sure.
So no, there's not anything else we can do for him. And at this point, we can't finish chemo because your son's on the edge of organ failure.
Right, there's no more.
And we're most likely going to lose Cash to organ failure in the coming days.
Right.
And that's when I started sneaking cannabis oil into him in Utah, which was probably one of the scariest moments of my life.
Can we back up the tape and, for our Utah audience?
Oh, they all know now.
Okay.
After we did this, what we were able to do, the doctor said, look, there's no way we can wean him off of these drugs. And I was like, well, you got to. You said you're gonna kill him with them. And they're like, well, that's not our protocol. And I was like, well, tell you what, I want you guys to start weaning him off the worst one first, and we'll just kind of see how this week goes. And that's when we started sneaking the oil into him. And within the first 6 hours of him on the oil, he slept for like 8 hours.
Okay.
And he hadn't slept more longer than 20 minutes in 6 months.
Sure.
Just because they're always in there poking and probbing and bells are ringing and whatever. And to be able to give him that comfort was just like, I was like, oh man. And then what started happening was they started weaning him off of these drugs, and we're about a week into it, and we weaned him off of all of this nausea and pain cocktails.
Wow.
And if any of you guys have family members that are on opiates, you don't do that. It's really hard to just take somebody off of opiates.
Right.
And we get to the end of the week, and they're like, wow, you were right. We were making him sick with all this medicine we were giving him. And what ended up happening was in 2010, Cash survived pulmonary hemorrhaging, septic shock, 40 days in the ICU on life support. And when they let him out of the ICU, he got named the Boy of Still. And it was all because as a family, we stepped in and we did whatever we had to do to take care of our son. And we had made so many friends and family at the hospital, because you're pretty intimate when you're on the oncology floor at a pediatric hospital.
Sure.
And I wanted to go and start just giving all these little kids medicine because you're watching all these little kids suffer. And I didn't do that because I was worried about Cash and Colton and getting them back to Montana safely.
Yeah.
And so in 2011, when we came home, that's when we told Cashie's story, and Cashie's story kind of went global overnight. And it was a big deal, because in Montana, we were in this whole battle at the same time with the state. Right. And so I sit here today as this professional real estate agent, and 13 years ago, I was a complete rebel, outlaw, and fighting cancer, and I didn't have nothing more than a gym bag,
Well, you know what? Cancer doesn't play fair.
Doesn't discriminate.
It doesn't. And cancer doesn't see the world with rules either. And sometimes it sounds like to me you had to meet cancer on its battlefield and fight it. And I don't know if it's fair enough to say you were a rebel, although in a textbook I suppose you are. However, really, isn't that a warrior? Isn't that a warrior? You met the enemy, and you guarded what was important. You played the role of shield and sword, and you went at it, regardless of what the rules were.
The way I looked at it was, if your kid was drowning in a pond, and it was federally illegal to swim in that pond, would you stand on the shore and watch your child drown, or would you hop in the damn pond and save your kid?
Do whatever it takes.
Do whatever it takes. So I hopped in the pond, and when I got back to the bank, I looked back out, and there was several more kids in the pond.
Oh.
And I had to hop back in the pond.
Right.
And so when we got back to Montana in 2011, and I told my dad and my parents, I said, look, I gotta tell Cash's story. Yeah. And everyone's like, no, Mike, you can't tell a story. You're gonna go to jail. Like, you guys beat cancer, just put your head down, just do your thing. Celebrate and don't say nothing. And I had to. And so when we told the story, and it caused us to have to raise my oldest son didn't get a childhood, because he went from being a 4-year-old on a dirt bike playing soccer to fighting cancer.
Fighting cancer.
And
again, not a fair play.
Not a fair play. Yeah. And through that, we had to break all these laws. And through that, I had to have hard conversations with him, letting him know that, hey, dude, at any moment stuff could get really bad.
This is the battlefield.
This is a battlefield.
Yeah.
And that was his reality.
Mike, you, so Cash Cash is still with us in legacy, in a story.
Well,
and it sounds to me like he gave that gift of saying, this is how you do it, Dad. This is how you do it. And I need you to get those other kids.
Cash kicked me right in the ass and made me step up and be something that I was scared to be at that moment. And he didn't have a choice and I didn't have a choice. And that's just how it was. And when I look back at his journey and his impact that he had in 4 short years on this earth, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of us live our whole lifetime and we don't have the impact that he had in 4 short years.
Right.
I think back on the first day we're at the hospital fighting cancer. Cash is in the ICU getting ready for brain surgery to go get the biopsy, and this family came in and they had this little bald kid, and he was smiling and walking down the hallway in his gown with the IV behind him. He must have been maybe 3, just a small kid. And I was like, it gave me hope, because I was like, wow, if this little kid can do it, we can do it. And fast forward to where Cash was the little bald kid, playing in his little reggae runner, which is little tight cars that we customized. I seen other families doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so what I realized quickly is everybody's watching us in our battles. They're watching on how we are adapting and how we're reacting. And there's more people looking at each one of us every day, looking for an ounce of hope or inspiration.
Yeah.
And that became our journey. And that's where the foundation was born. I said, okay, if there's no cure to cancer, and we raise hundreds of millions of dollars that go to finding the cure that we don't have,
Right.
and we're using barbaric treatments from 50 years ago,
Sure.
then what can we do on the ground level to help families fighting cancer? And that's where we born the foundation. And what we did was we started customizing little Tykes cars, and we put IV poles on them, and it was like a beacon of hope through the hospital. Like, when you go in there and you see a little kid rolling around the hospital smiling, like, it makes you smile.
Yeah.
And that's how you can fight cancer, with smiles.
Right.
Because even if it's only a minute, it's a minute that cancer isn't winning.
If you can bring a minute of sunshine, you'll do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then through that, we realized that obviously the kid with cancer is affected. However, the healthy siblings are the ones that are most affected.
Right.
Because they're the one that's not dying from cancer. So stand over here, and our whole life's going to get uprooted, and you just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so our foundation, where we started at in 2011 to where it is now, it has morphed and changed. And when I first started the foundation, I didn't know anything about running a 501c3. I still don't know everything that you need to know about running a 501c3.
You rebel.
It's just like, it was something that I wanted to do. I didn't understand what I was taking on.
Sure.
And so running a foundation, it has all these different challenges, because you're volunteer driven, and we were a family that was living out of basically a gym bag.
Yeah.
Most families starting foundations have millions of dollars. They're looking for a tax write-off. And so we started a foundation from the rock bottom in a town of hundreds of foundations.
Right.
And causes, and they're all great. And there's only so much resources to pull from.
Sure.
And so in 2015, when I came back from California, we were down there basically after Cash passed till about August of 2015, because we had all these families that were reaching out to us for medicine. And Montana had outlawed everything again, so we couldn't get safe access in Montana. And because of our story, we had so many families reaching out to me, and I couldn't tell them no.
Got it.
Because I was that guy.
There's still kids in the pond.
I was the guy asking for help in 2010 and
Sure.
2011. That
You know
was
that.
me.
Yep.
And I expected people to help me.
Okay.
And so then all of a sudden, cash is gone, and I have people calling asking for help. So we had to help them. And so we spent several years in California helping numerous families get safe access to medicine. And that doesn't pay the bills because, again, it was all volunteer driven. And I looked at my son. It was like 10 o'clock at night. We're in some backwood farm in Humboldt, California. I mean, we got flown over by helicopters every day. There was like raids. There was organizations called Camp that would come down like in helicopters and carabiners and M16s and chop plants down.
Wow.
And like, that's where we were at. Like,
Okay.
Like it was when I close my eyes and I think back on it, I'm like, did that really ever happen?
Yeah.
And I looked at my son and I was like, you know what, dude? Like, maybe we ought to just go back to Montana and I'll get my real estate license and sell real estate.
And this is Colton,
Yep.
and this is 2015.
Yep.
So Colton is 15?
He's like 9 or 10
9?
at
Okay.
the time.
Yeah, okay. And so you get back to Montana. You get into real estate. This is several years after the dust cloud has settled, and
Yep.
and you're on to you're back on your saddle.
Yep. So I got my real estate license. I didn't know what brokerage I was going to go to. I didn't know anything about real estate.
What was the deciding factor, though? Why real estate? You're selling cars prior. You could have, Mike, you could have chosen to say, that's it. That's our story. I lost my child. I have all the reason, and may even say right, to just put my head back in the sand and say, I'm done with this. I don't want to play this game anymore. The battlefield's not level. This isn't fair. I don't want to play anymore. And sign out. Why did you go back to start a business?
Well, I still had healthy kids here. One.
You had more to
So
go.
I couldn't give up yet.
Okay.
Right. And I had so many families that still needed support, and I knew I needed to be able to help them.
I still had healthy kids. I still had people to fight for. I still had room to grow. And it would be selfish to not grow. Wow, that sounds a lot like yesterday.
Well, that
For a
and
minute.
when we think about these kids with cancer, they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And these little guys fight their hearts out. If you go to a pediatric oncology floor, that's where you can get really real.
Yeah.
And you can see that, like, the things that we sit around and complain about and the obstacles that we have on a day-to-day, like, I always think of Chan from The Hangover, but did you die? You know, like our problems are so minute. And then you go onto an oncology floor and you see these little kids fighting with a smile and living in the moment.
Yeah.
And it puts perspective to our existence here. And if we're healthy, if our feet work, if we can get up and move out of the house and we're not immunocompromised, we really don't have any excuses to not go out and do something good.
Unless we were selfish.
Unless we're selfish or whatever that reason is. However, at the same time, like I have compassion for people going through life, and everybody deals with things differently. Everybody deals with death differently. When you think about death has multiple stages.
Yeah.
You have that moment of death, you have the funeral, and then you have that moment when their name's no longer brought up on a day-to-day basis. And so with our foundation, with Cashy's Legacy, the reason why I'm so honored to get up here and talk about it is because any chance I get to keep Cash's name alive, it means that he was here.
Yeah.
Like, he was really here. And the mind can play some crazy tricks on you along the way. And we're all in that right now in this shift. We have a choice on how we're going to address the shift. We have a choice on how we're going to impact the people around us in our offices, in our households, and the listing appointments we go on. We have a choice. And so for me to continue Cashy's legacy, it's super important because, one, like, Cashy was the most important person in my life. And if I could have traded spots with him, I would have. I wouldn't be here. And that wasn't an option. And so the option that I had was to battle cancer and honor his legacy and go out and affect as many families as I can. And at the time when I started selling real estate, I didn't know what brokerage to choose. Keller Williams didn't even exist in Missoula, Montana. I didn't know who Keller Williams was.
Right.
However, we had several brokerages come and buy us lunch, and KW was the only one that sent me an email thanking me for the opportunity to give me some Jimmy Johns. And I was like, dang, that's pretty cool. Like, these guys actually like sent me an email and thanked me for giving me a sandwich. Out of like 5 brokerages, they were the only one. And then they called me up and invited me to some luncheon in Kalispell, and I was like, hey guys, like, I'm broke. I can't move to Kalispell. Like, I'm here in Missoula. And she was like, no, we're launching a market center in Missoula, and I want you to meet Casey Hart and Jason Suchecki for a meeting. Mm-hmm. And that's when I met probably the best broker that I know, Casey Hart. I honestly, I know some great brokers with KW. Yeah. But Casey has been just a pivotal like mentor for me in my journey of getting into real estate. And I sat down in this office with these guys, and that's when they told me about Keller Williams. And they're like, it's about God, family, then work. And that resonated with me because even though I was looking for a career, I was not looking for a job. And I had our youngest daughter, Rebel, was just a baby. She was maybe 12 months old at the time. My oldest daughter was 2.5, 3, and my wife was a RN night shift. And so I was on kid duty. Sure. And so I was able to bring my kids with me to go sell real estate. And I was able to bring them to the market center. I was able to bring them to the meetings. Like, my first couple years in real estate, I was not killing it. I was managing a lot of things. And at the same time, I had this thought of in 2015 of shutting the foundation down, because I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know how to go out and ask for help. I was so pulled back from everything and everyone. Like, Missoula was so amazing to our family when we were fighting cancer. Like, the philanthropy, the people that came through in 2010 and 2011 and like did fundraisers for us. The strippers at the Fox Club were literally raising money for cash. I swear to God. Like
everybody has a purpose, Mike.
Everybody like pulled in. Like, and some more than others, is all I'm gonna say. But it was humbling, because I never had to ask for help in 2010 and 2011. Help was there. Okay.
Now it's 2015, 2015.
Now it's 2015,
You're
and
thinking about shutting the foundation down.
Well, yeah, because
it's hard.
You go through all this stuff, and then cash passes away, which is a huge loss. Sure. It's like your Super Bowl team loses, right?
A little bit bigger than that.
It's kind of hard to put your jersey on the next day. Got it. Right? Yeah. Like, it was a huge loss. And then on top of that, we lost everything, and I didn't have a purpose for a moment. Yeah. And so when you have all of that with you, it's hard to put yourself out and reach out to people. And what happened was I went to my first Bold in Helena, Montana. And that's where I met several of you guys that I consider family. And through that journey at Bold, it helped me put together our first Sportsmen's Against Cancer banquet in 2015. It was just an idea. It was a thought. And I applied Bold to the foundation and was able to save it and bring it back to what you guys seen in that video. Yeah. That's what I visualized when I thought of the banquet in 2015. However, our first banquet was at the Orchard Homes Community Center in Missoula, very small little community center. Yep. And in my mind, I was building that, and it took several years of doing whatever it takes to put on this event.
Yeah, doing whatever it takes.
And sometimes you question your sanity. Like, why do we do this? Like, because we don't make a financial gain from it. However, we're able to help so many families that it feels so amazing to help people that it keeps you going.
Yeah.
And at the same moment, like, we're 3 weeks from our 6th event this year.
Yep.
And I'm in that zone where I'm like, MontanaCamp, the banquet, like, how do I do all of this? Do I tell Justin I can't help? Do I pull out? Do I cancel the event? It seems so easy to just like, oh, I'll just cancel the event and I don't have to worry about it. However, I know the regret that I would have of canceling that event the day after the event. I couldn't live with that.
Let's illustrate that for a second. What is that? What is that regret? What was it? So that's what you said. You just admitted. I was thinking about canceling the event. I was thinking about saying no. Yet I didn't. What was that?
How many of you out here are hunters? How many of you have decided to sleep in and not go out one morning? And then a half hour later, you're laying there in the bed and you feel sick about it. Like, what have I done? Like, what have I done?
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Like I could have went out and did this and I chose not to.
Okay, you're on the journey. You pull over on the side of the road to take a breath, to think about it. You picture two outcomes: continuing to charge the storm or stopping. And you pictured those two outcomes, and this outcome, you just couldn't live with it. You didn't want to do it. You said, I can't do it. At all costs, I'm going to charge the storm.
I'm going to charge it.
It doesn't make sense. I don't see the outcome. I can't see what the rest of the road looks like. Financially, I'm bankrupt. This is self-talk, by the way.
No, seriously, that it just goes
You
down.
still charge it, though. I'm doubling down on this moment here because I'm taking something away about the picture of regret. And Mike, if I may borrow your story for a minute, because boy, it took all of my body to not tear up when I heard that picture, when I pictured that pond and those kids. And you're a dad of one of the kids in the pond. And you don't have any relation to any of the other kids. They're all strangers. Yeah, your kid's saying, Dad, there's other kids. Dad, there's other kids. And if I don't go back in that pond, I don't want to picture what that story is like for those kids. If we don't do this event, this banquet, I don't want to picture that outcome. So I'll charge the storm at all costs.
Well, and we have kids that are counting on us. And what's so amazing now, we fast forward 13 years, and this is why I'm so excited about 2024's MontanaCamp being in Kalispell, is now Kalispell, Montana has pediatric oncology facility.
Okay.
So, so now our families in Montana can fight cancer in Montana, and because of that, it's now put more pressure onto our foundation because we have more families now in the last 2.5 years, 3 years, that are reaching out to us for support.
We're running short on time, and I wanted to, as the nature of MontanaCamp is to give you, I see Stephen has his notebook, and he's probably using 2 different colored pens because that's what he does. He's a pro like that. And our goal here is to, as Josh Freeberg said, not leave with just smart notebooks, to leave with taking action. And what I appreciate about this story, and I'm viewing it like a model, I have a reason. I don't know exactly how I'm putting it together. I'm going to charge forward, though I know the direction I need to run. I'm building systems and models to support that direction. I get hit in the face by something, this force out there that doesn't play fair. I don't know exactly how to get back up. I'm going to get back up, though. And I'm going to surround myself with people to help me, your broker, your OP, your community, your friends. And it's okay to feel like quitting as long as you don't.
As long as you don't.
As long as you don't. It's okay, it's human to feel like quitting. Take that away. It's okay to feel like quitting. Don't.
Well, then you look at it and you apply that back to real estate. Like, 2015, Mike, imagine the drunk monkey that I had in 2015.
Yeah, big one. Gorilla.
Like, one of my biggest bugaboos was, why would my friends or family want to buy a house for me when I lost mine? Like, how am I supposed to be a real estate professional when I don't even own a home?
Yeah.
Right? That was huge.
Yeah.
When Bowl told me I needed to call my friends and family, and I haven't talked to several of like my database in years because I was so embarrassed of our journey of losing. I was in a shell. And so now I have to reach out to everybody that I haven't reached out to and thanked for supporting me. And I'm going to ask them who they know that wants to buy or sell real estate today.
Or invest.
Or invest. And if you don't know, who do you know that might know? Like, there was some challenges there that I had to overcome. On top of that, I had hair down to my mid-back. I'm covered in tattoos. Who's gonna look at me as this professional real estate agent? And who am I? And who is Mike Hyde gonna be as this real estate professional? And my perception.
How did you silence that drunk monkey? Very big drunk monkey. How did you silence that?
I used Mojo Dialer, and I called for sale by owners and expires because I was afraid to call my database.
Systems and models.
So
That's why he was on the panel yesterday.
My first 2 years in real estate, I didn't work a database. I literally would go door knock and call for sale by owners and expires because it hurt less for me to get told no by a FSBO than it did to actually put myself vulnerably out in front of my database.
Okay.
And what happened was I had an accident in 2017 that almost paralyzed me. And when I'm laying in my hospital bed at my house for like 10 weeks, basically, I couldn't walk. I'm in a back brace. And I'm going through notebooks of follow-up that I didn't do. And what I realized at that moment was I was amazing at lead generating. Holy smokes. I was terrible at lead follow-up. I was calling for sale by owners for fun, guys, and not following back up with them.
Right.
They wanted me to. I had notebooks with names, times I was supposed to call that I didn't. And what I realized at that moment was in 2017, I had made more money than I ever had in my adult life. In 1 year, I made like $65,000. And I was like, my first year of real estate, if I could make $50,000, I was going to just be so dang excited. Like, we're all going to IHOP. You know what I mean? Like, this is good.
Nice.
2017, $65,000 was more money I could even imagine making. And
Went to IHOP twice.
We went to Montana Club, son. No, in my notebook, I lost almost $150,000 in GCI from lack of follow-up.
Okay.
And that was a hard pill for me to swallow as I was laying there thinking about my actions that caused me to be in that situation, which I made a mistake and hurt myself.
Sure.
Almost lost my life or paralyzed myself. Almost left my family 7 notebooks with a bunch of leads I didn't follow up with. And so then I'm like, well, shoot, I better put my database together. And started calling. I'd lost 7 more transactions from friends and family that I didn't communicate with that bought and sold real estate. And so at that moment is when I was like, I need to get my database together. I need to take this serious. And I'm going to double down. And at that moment, that's what caused us to get to where we're at right now.
Your business supports the Cash Hyde Foundation, right?
It's symbiotic. Like,
Yep.
my network, like, the reason why I got into real estate is I wanted to change the people I was around.
Sure.
I wanted to change my environment, and I wanted to be around professional people. And I didn't know when I joined Keller Williams what I was joining. I had no idea. And then when I looked up and realized where destiny had taken me by following my little thoughts in my head that put me into these situations and where it was playing out, that was super huge for me. And my idea on it was, I don't want to be the guy in front of Walmart ringing a bell.
Not that there's anything wrong with being a manager at Walmart, right? We learned that yesterday.
I'm talking
too.
about this. I'm talking about the Salvation Army guy. Out
Oh, ringing the
front.
bell, the greeter.
Like I don't want to be that guy. I would rather go out and make as much money as I can. And the model with Keller Williams is make $1 million, give $1 million. So my drive, my passion to build a big mega team is for the lives I can change when I do that.
Yeah.
And that's what causes us to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone and get authentic and real. And if you think about it, when we're in our moments of comfort, it's when we're dying. Comfort is death. If you don't get out of your comfort zone in every aspect of your life and get uncomfortable quickly, you're not going to grow. It's how muscles grow.
That's right.
You got to tear them. You got to rip them. You got to push yourself through these barriers and you get uncomfortable. And when you do that, the reward that you feel is amazing, and it outweighs the pain of doing it. And you don't have to feel that pain of regret, which in my opinion is greater than all of it.
So now we know your why. And now we know why you don't quit. Because there's more to save. I love the statement in the very first couple of minutes of our conversation, we're fighting cancer with smiles. Because if we can be a source of sunshine on what is otherwise a very overcast, gloomy day for a child fighting cancer, that's what we're after. And if you can picture that, if you need to draw a picture of a pond with kids in it, so that you can get over the fear of making a phone call to a FSBO that you connected with yesterday, or knocking on a door, or challenging yourself to a bold 100, or whatever that may be, then that's what you need to do. Because for a moment when we paused and we said, let's double down on this moment for a minute, let's talk about regret, let's talk about pulling the car over to the side of the road and painting two pictures, the picture of outcome of me going forward and charging the storm, or the picture of outcome of me quitting. I can't quit. Because there are others out there.
If I look back on it, and if I didn't have my son,
with that hand on your shoulder,
and I didn't have my oldest daughter Catherine when Cash passed away, I don't think I would be here today. I at that moment I didn't want to live, and I wasn't like suicidal, but I was okay with not being here anymore. And the night Cash passed away, he gave me this amazing gift because I was holding him when he took his last breath. And we're all energy, frequency, and vibration at the end of the day. And we have a choice on what energy and frequency and vibration we want to put out there. Yeah. And when Cash took his last breath, I felt every bit of energy that I had ever given him like pour into my body. And when I lifted my head up to tell our family that he had passed, I felt him explode out of me in every direction in this universe. And it was the most amazing experience that I ever felt, next to watching my children be born. And so I'm thankful that I have big whys. And if you don't have big whys, I encourage you to find something to hang on to, and that's going to cause you to take action.
That's worth writing down right there. If you don't have a big why, I encourage you to find something to hold on to and take that inspires great action. Yeah. Mike, our time is up. However, I have a very special surprise for you tomorrow. And I hear there's a party in June in Missoula.
Yes, sir.
There's a banquet.
Yes, sir. We have our 6th annual Sportsmen's Against Cancer banquet at Karis Park. It's a Saturday during graduation and wedding season because we're crazy. And you're all invited. So, no, we're really excited for the banquet. And like I say, like there was about 2 months ago, guys, I thought about quitting. Like,
He told me this. We were planning MontanaCamp, and he says, I've got so much going on, I think I need to cancel the banquet. And being really real and borrowing just one more minute, I was too. Because this was upside down. And this was hitting me in the face. And then I thought of this. And I said, if I quit, we won't be able to share the story. And that's why we didn't. And that's why we pressed on. And then when he called me back a minute later, he said, I'm not quitting the foundation. I'm not canceling the foundation. I said, neither am I, buddy. And we're going forward. And my commitment to you is that, because I think MontanaCamp is just getting started, my commitment to you is to be a forever partner of the Hyde Foundation.
I appreciate that.
Because there's more out there. There's more in the pond. And we're going to get them.
And now we have a ground level zone in Kalispell where we can put our efforts.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something that like Montana needs to get behind.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if there is no cure, then our love, our positive energy, our ability to get out there and impact lives through selling real estate, that's our catalyst, and that's how we're going to do it.
That's it.
Change lives through real estate.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Friends, Mike Hyde.
Thanks, Ed.
I would encourage you to give that man a hug and thank him for his story and thank him for sharing and thank him for being vulnerable. And I would encourage you to network with him and partner. And I'd encourage you to model that story. Take it and adopt it and do as he said. If you don't have one, find one and charge it. Because look at what happens when we do. I mean, can you see the gravity of giving up? It's selfish. It's selfish to give up. Other people are counting on you. There are still kids in the pond, Mike. Can we get 15 on the clock? I need a break. And then we're going to come back with the panel, okay? Thank you, MontanaCamp. Good morning.